Good morning or good afternoon if you are in the Far East. My name is Casper. I'm from ProductIP. We have another Tuesday and another Compliance Tuesday, a point of order. And you can see my attire. Who needs suits anyway? Last Friday, Kimberly Bos from the Netherlands, who we proudly sponsored since 2021, has become world champion in skeleton. That's quite an achievement. There are similarities between top sport and dealing with product compliance. I can tell you that. Focus, rhythm, discipline, journaling, writing down what you want to do. Focus on what you can change, not what you cannot influence. And of course, raw talent, in this case, the talent of Kimberly Bos. Another point of order, I would like to pay attention in a number of events. We have, of course, many Compliance Tuesdays. There's a workshop, a paid workshop in Bamberg for the Germans in our audience. There was 2 networking and knowledge events in Hong Kong, one next to what is called the Global Sources trade show at the airport, and one the HKTDC electronics show in Wan Chai on April 14. And the April 14 will be particularly interesting. We do that with others, not just Dutch Cham, also with the Swedish Chamber of Commerce and potentially the German Chamber of Commerce. Norway and the UK are probably joining in. Speakers, Spring Postenel, potentially a speaker of European representatives in Hong Kong, and myself. And I see one typo. In Shenzhen, April 15, we will have a live Compliance Tuesday in Shenzhen. That's been a while. We did that before Corona. We will start that now again. More details on the links and on the event page. If it's not for you, maybe it's for somebody in your network. So today, Compliance Tuesday, we're going to talk about toys. There's no Mentimeter session today. It will be recorded. If you have questions, post them in the Q&A or in the chat or mail to me. That's fine. Given the fact that we have limited time in this session, I'll probably will answer them as a part of the slide deck. There's a number of slides that I put into the handout version of the slide deck to go into more details. It's a difficult topic. It's a massive topic, and that's why I made this presentation a little bit different than my previous presentations, and you will see that. I'll love to hear from you if you think this approach is relevant for you. From playful to painful, from toys regulation, it's a directive now. Toys regulation refit, it means really, really serious business. And I got from a dear friend of mine who is really involved in dealing with the development of this new regulation, an information set that I could use to prepare on some aspects. To give you an idea, that would give me just over 1.5 seconds per slide for each page, 370 pages. It's too much in that sense, but let's see what we can do. So the current status, it's draft, published in February, just recently published as draft. So we expect that it will be finalized, let's say Q2 of this year. It's a regulation, not a directive, so it will apply in all EU member states. I need to do the typo there. All EU member states equally. Remark for online sellers is made just as with the General Product Safety Regulation. It's made as well here, specifically in the toys. I think it's a little bit irrelevant to mention it there when it's also mentioned in the overall arching framework. Time schedule is very relevant. So when it's published, it will repeal the old one 30 months after the EAIF entry into force of the TSR. And into force is like 18 days or 24 days after publication. 30 months, 2.5 years. It's quite some time. Then there's a transitional period of 30 months after the date of the entry into force. So that's a little bit longer for some aspects. So some will be applied immediately from the date of entry into force. I think that has to do with some of the chemical testing where there's new harmonized standards coming. So it makes sense. We actually are referring to new standards rather than a new regulation. And because it's so massive, they actually restricted the period to which you can still outsell stock. And I think it's smart because otherwise you would just buy loads of toys that do comply with the current directive, but not with the future regulation, and try to make a business out of that for the next decade or so. So there is a 15 months sold out period after entry into force of the new toy safety regulation. Yeah, so TSD, Toy Safety Directive, Toy Safety Regulation. Wow, 50 months, 30 months. Why do you think there are such long transition periods? Let that sink in, because you might think, okay, not so urgent. Well, I can tell you, you probably need every single day. And these transition periods are the results of governments wanting to do things tomorrow and industries wanting to do things a couple of years later. So it's already a compromise. And if you look at what has to be done, you probably need every single day, especially in the way you are dealing with product compliance in general, not just with toys. A little bit about us. You might know us as a compliance SaaS, a software as a service. It's a nice abbreviation. But we are, of course, and in Holland, cheese is kaas. We are also knowledge as a service. We have a comprehensive and monitored regulatory database. And together with ProductIP, I would say we are knowledge as a service. We come not just with a solution, we also come with tech, and some call it regulatory technology. To give you an idea, this is an overview of what we process in an average year, from what's happening in Brussels till what's happening in the various countries, which is published via TRIS. And ultimo, we have to read a lot in order to just to find out if it's really applicable for non-food products, which is our scope. And so you cannot just look at what's happening here, which is like 400 changes a month. That's the result of filtering out what's happening in a much broader scale. And that's a lot. I would say, and this is quite new maybe for you, we are also process as a service. And we have a workflow in ProductIP that we didn't invent, but we automated it. It's inspired by applicable regulatory frameworks like General Product Safety Regulation or Market Surveillance Regulatory Framework 2019-1020. And we look at our customers in the non-food supply chain and think about what do they need to deal with this tsunami from Brussels. So we are a PaaS as well. We don't just want to tell you what is coming towards you. We also want to give you the right tools to deal with it yourselves. So we want to make things actionable, either for you or for your suppliers or together. I think that's very, very relevant. So there's many things happening in Brussels. And if you take them one on the chin, it's quite tough to deal with. But if you think about what you actually need to do and how it's affecting a product or artwork or process or supply chain, then you can actually stack these things over each other and think, okay, this is about toys, but in fact, it's not really different than about batteries or about packaging. So certain things you always need to do could be related to supply chain or process or artwork. And it's good to have such placeholders because it makes it easily for you and colleagues to understand. Not everybody is in the trenches of QA, QC. Some is category management, some is top management. So I wanted to introduce what I call PAPS method, an impact assessment method, focusing on product, artwork, process, and supply chain as placeholders for what you have to do in relation to the Toys Directive. So product, what must be redesigned, retested, rethought? Artwork, labels, manuals, packaging, online listings. It's also a web process, how you deal with things that you need to do different. And supply chain could be new due diligence demands, but could also be different kind of collaboration with your suppliers. So that's the structure of my keynote. So let's look at products first. One of the key reasons to change the current toys directive is chemicals. We know more and more about the impact of substances on our health, especially on the health of our kids. And we want to strengthen the framework around it. And also we want to harmonize it. So regulation rather than directive, same rules apply for all the kids in Europe, for all the toys that they use. And there will be more bans. There will be a broader scope of substances that be banned, and there will be lower thresholds. And one of the things that is new, was new for me, maybe not new for you as well, the ALARA principle. As low as reasonable achievable. Wow, that's really something, right? I think they came up with that in order to be able to say, we don't know yet what is achievable, and this regulation will have a long-lasting impact over many years. So reasonable achievable is actually technology as well. What is reasonable? If it can be achieved in food contact materials, then why can it not be achieved in toys? If it can be achieved in products that are used for drinking water, so why can it not be used for toys? So trace level allowances, trace levels are levels of substances that are actually always in certain materials, trace level, ALARA principle. Thresholds down for several substances, an increasing number of substances that now are subjected to labeling requirements. Labeling requirements means you need to tell the end user that certain substances are in the product, right? New formaldehyde limit in wood, still a little bit hovering above the market. It's still a draft. Some restrictions of nitrosamines and nitrosatable substances. In general, this is the main part of the Toys Directive when it comes to product. And as substances are almost in every material, then it's going to impact all the toys. There are already some new chemical standards published, and I have a detailed in the slide deck handout, and you can read about that. That is something about some of these requirements will already be applicable quite soon after publication of the new toy safety regulation, and that has a relationship to these new harmonized standards. Okay. There's a part on digital safety. It has a link to the AI Act and the Cyber Resilience Act, and it also has to do with connected toys. You know, it's similar with other elements. You can see I have a separate toy, but toys could be connected to internet or could interact with other products. And you need to also consider psychological safety and cognitive development. So what is the impact of playing with these toys on the mental health of the kids? Wow. Just give me a teddy bear. Physical design, always relevant. There's some new requirements for sound levels, impulse and continuous noise. There's some new requirements for magnets. There are some new requirements for expanding materials like that, and small parts and some stricter controls. So once it's published, you and or your supplier who's making toys 24/7 should start to read this in very much detail and start pre-screening. Look at worst case material assessments. Don't wait for the official transition periods to run out, because you might need to retool and you might need to retest. So you might need to judge if you still want to continue with this toy or just let it phase out. Materials you use today may not pass tomorrow. And new materials in a housing of a toy or another part of a toy means retesting. Yeah. So it's quite impactful. I would say it's not possible to test everything at the far end when the toy is there because it's just too many restrictions. You need to know what are the raw materials used in those toys. So it's almost like with food contact materials, good manufacturing practice, not just the first tier of supplier that deals with it, also their vendors. What raw materials are we using? What are the substances in there? Did the other one in the supply chain already manage compliance of materials? It's better to test raw materials than to test each toy. In the scope, the exclusion of toy slings and catapults is deleted, so these are now in the scope. And there are some new remarks about scooters and books. Very limited, but in general, the scope is quite the same. So does this already make you dizzy? I need to have a glass of water. If you look at all those chemicals and all those, how to say, abbreviations of these chemicals, perhaps it's time to invest in some knowledge as well. If you are in the European part of the supply chain, I don't expect you to become a chemistry and a very specialist manufacturer of toys, but you need to understand the lingo of toys. So if you're completely new to the game, go for a basic chemical risk training. And if you want to know a little bit more and you are already familiar with many basic aspects around substances in products, continue with advanced chemical risk training, then go to the toys. Don't do toys before you know a lot about chemicals. Same for food contact materials. Don't go for food contact materials training if you don't have advanced chemical risk knowledge as well. So it's really that kind of order. Yeah. There's plenty of opportunities for joining these trainings. They are live in the Netherlands for Dutch audience, and they are in English via Zoom online. Contact us for specific requests. Knowledge is king. Artwork. What's different, going to be different on labels, manuals, packaging, online listings? One thing is interesting. Warnings. Look at toys. Look how many warnings we need to cramp into these small packagings. Most likely, they're going to be replaced by warning symbols. That's great because, warning symbols on packaging save a lot of space and they are generic, so they are not language dependent. However, symbols always need to be explained. So that means then a manual? No. The explanation of those icons will be in the digital product passport. There you have it. First time mentioned, the digital product passport. It's not new. We will see it with packaging as well. Recycling instructions with icons on the packaging, explanation what these icons mean in a digital way. It makes sense if we want to reduce the total amount of paper used when we sell products. You don't want a big book to explain why we now suddenly have icons, right? No official standards assigned yet for these icons, but the European Union has given themselves a time frame to inform us about their decision. I would say ISO 3864, 7010, or 8124 probably will be the ones that they use for warnings. I think it's good. It's much easier to deal with explanation via digital way and then stick with icons on products. It saves a lot of time, right? In the DPP, you also need information about the presence in substances of concern. So you need to be very transparent. Later in the presentation, I will tell you more about what this actually means. It also is in the DPP which batch it is. So not just SKU, but also batch traceability information. You probably already start to feel where I'm going to. Artwork itself with icons will be much simpler than it is now, right? You agree with me? Then process. What do you need to do different tomorrow compared to what you do today? I want to scroll back a little bit. We are used to sign an EU DOC, a European Declaration of Conformity. And on that declaration of conformity, there's a number of regulations or directives that require you to, for the management, to draw up an EU DOC. Some people call it a CE declaration, which is fine. It's officially called European Declaration of Conformity. And on that DOC, REACH is not there, POP is not there, food contact materials is not there. So many a case people ask us, what's actually what you need, what we really need to do, looking at the list that ProductIP provides? Well, you should do it all. Yeah, but it's not all on the DOC. It doesn't matter. The DOC is actually just a focus point for things that are extremely important and create a liability layer of the one that signs the document. Yeah. If you as management of companies or somebody on behalf of you sign EUC DOCs and you have no budget at all to manage compliance, then it is forgery and fraud because it cannot be true. Yeah? And if it's true just by coincidence, that's not compliance. The actual legal statement or confirmation that you did do due diligence is you place the product on the market. You make it and release it into the European market, or you import it and release it on the European market. Yeah. Placing a product on the market requires you to make things compliant. The digital product passport, now we're going to go into the process. I think digital product passport is both in process and in supply chain. So the DOC was a SKU, an article number based related document. The passport with traceability requirements per batch is a batch-based system. That's a different kind of tempo in which you need to collect and deal with information. So it's increasing the pressure on the supply chain to continue to produce products that are the same as last time and compliant. In fact, the DOC by itself will be no longer there for toys. The digital product passport will be the DOC. Not quite sure how they want to do it from a signing point of view. I think they will need to crystal that one out, or some lawyers will crystal it out. But this is in line with what I said before. Placing a product on the market means that the product that you stated the product complies with all the applicable legislation, POP and REACH included. Yeah. The scope of that declaration, therefore, is much broader than before, not just Toys Directive or EMC Directive or Low Voltage Directive. No, your declaration is also complies with everything else that is applicable. So suddenly that ProductIP list is not so stupid anymore. It's continuous verification and updates. It's not just about the SKU and, oh, we check it every 2 years because we do that every 2 years. No, batch produced. Yeah. So batch produced, not just SKUs in a product information management platform or information management system, or what you want to call it, a PIM, like something like SAP. A one-time document won't cut it. Compliance now runs in cycles. And this is not just for toys. It will be similar for packaging. It will be similar for others. So that's why I want to use this POPs approach. I want you to use the Toys Directive as an example and think about what the impact is if this will become the new reality for product compliance in general. No digital product passport will mean no market access. Well, that makes sense. A non-compliant product should not be on the EU market. It will start as a barrier on the borders when we have a new customs systems in Europe. They're working on that, combining 100+ different national member states systems into one big one. And that new custom systems also will have a digital product passport data entry point. This is not a European digital product passport solution. Yeah? It's not that your digital product passport will run on the EU customs IT system. It's a custom requirement for import, it's a declaration. Plan is to start in 2028 for drop shipping. That means from outside the EU directly to EU consumers. We all can benefit from selling on the EU market, but we all need to play the game in the same way. I think that third bullet is very, very relevant for manufacturers in the Far East that want to continue to sell products into the EU market. No DPP entry means no import. And the DPP data entry also will require, do you have a European authorized representative? And is that one blacklisted or not? So it's really a lock on the door, okay? Because this is IT, scalable checks before import, not just two people looking at a warehouse where there's 100,000 plus packaging being dropped by airplanes every hour. This is data entry. The DPP also need to, of course, because it's customs, commodity code, which is HS, toy classification. Yes, it still needs to have a CE marking in the DPP. There need to be a list of the allergenic fragrances that are present in the toys. There need to be a list of substances of concern present in toys. Warnings in applicable language. This is the explanation of the icons. The interesting thing with this from a liability point of view is that market surveillance authorities checking a DPP without contacting you can compare the results of testing that toy with what you have declared. I would say this is low-hanging fruit for market surveillance authorities. It's not easy for a supply chain to come up with kind of values as this. You really need to maintain it. And how you maintain it, you really want to test every toy? No. You want to have a stable supply of raw materials that comply with the legislation, like granulate suitable for toys in a certain color, and then use that to make a toy, and not test the toy if the granulate plastic used was actually conforming. This is a rethinking of the way a supply chain needs to deal with compliance. It sounds as more work, but it's actually cost effective. People that don't do that today make products that don't comply with legislation. Yeah. And yes, we have great laboratory friends that say, well, we do a risk-based assessment. Yes, you can test that product, but if you don't know what were the raw materials used in mass production, what actually are you then testing, right? So we need to have a more solid base, and the chemicals are out there. Chinese legislation for producing of chemical substances actually is not only not different than the rest of the world, they implemented it already long before it was required to do worldwide. The trouble is many of your suppliers, they don't have a license to produce for the Chinese local market. They just have an export license. It really, in reality, means that some of the products that you actually buy and export it from China, you could not import and sell on the Chinese market. Let that sink in. So compliance runs in cycles, batch-based. You need to move from document storage to live compliance tracking. You need to go to batch-based. You need to really need to assign ownership of the updates within your company. And you just don't want only data, not one-time PDFs, you also need compliance data. So who is responsible, who will become responsible for maintaining compliance also post-launch? Yeah. After the SKU was released first time to the market and you have reorders, how are you going to manage that? Many of you don't have staff assigned to do this or not sufficient. Looking at the time of the QR code, I think it's relevant to understand that the Toys Directive has a certain schedule in mind, the packaging regulation, toys regulation, they have a certain schedule in mind for digital product passport. However, there's one overarching development, and that's the GS1 project for the European Union and the US. They want everybody to move to 2D QR code in 2027 anyway. And the reason for that is that the current AEN code is not sufficient, does not have sufficient data to actually do traceability and batch-based tracing. And so we just need more numbers. And we need a smarter QR code, so they call it the 2D QR code. So I think the tempo of your change is actually more initiated by this project than Toys Directive, move to toys regulation, or the new packaging and packaging waste regulation. So anyway, you're going to move to a 2D QR code, and where are consumers going to land and what do they see? 2027, even if it's 2000, even if it becomes 2028, it's not far away if you consider what you need to build. And obviously, we already have a QR code link in ProductIP technical files since November, could be October 2010. Yeah. It's also, and it's quite provocative, I know. That's my role. You really need to understand the impact of this. You cannot look at this new change and think, okay, I'm going to do tomorrow everything in the same way I'm going to do it yesterday. Maybe it's time to stop pretending to be the manufacturer. And I'm saying that, what is the manufacturer? Manufacturer is your brand in Europe and your address. Quasi manufacturer. That's often private label. Many retailers are like that. Brand owner and their address. Okay, if that's the case, whose digital product passport is it in that case? It should be yours. Yeah. So are you going to build a system where you actually are going to get the data of your suppliers and maintain that? Are you going to hand out QR codes to your suppliers? Why aren't you moving to a license model? So I think it's a logical shift, sorry, to move from private label ownership to licensing model. I'm not saying that you need to do it. I'm just saying that you need to consider if it's worth doing it. Because if I would be a supplier of a product with a brand of a retailer and I'm based in Europe and it has your brand and my address, then I am the European brand owner. So it's my duty. I could be the importer, I could be the manufacturer. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I think it will. That's the impact. You need to not just look at toys legislation and think, okay, it's about chemicals. No, if it's DPP and it moves from SKU to batch-based, and there is no declaration of conformity that can be signed, it's a digital product passport. Well, who's going to sign that document? Who's going to release that part? So it's really, really a complete new process overhaul. Licensing per order even is not new. And is it really that consumers look at the address that goes with the brand? How many Disney addresses are there then in Europe, right? So I would really consider that, but still, you still have responsibilities because you are a distributor and you are also or could be a producer under extended producer responsibility schemes, recycling schemes. That's enough already to deal with if you are owner of a shop. So what about supply chain? Any new due diligence demands? Not really. Not really. But do we really need somebody in Brussels to answer this question? I don't think so. I think we all want compliant toys made by adults. So there's no new due diligence requirements specifically in the toys regulation. But there are many other things that you need to consider looking at your suppliers and your supply base. And that has to do with the work of managing compliance. Because and I often say it during my risk assessment trainings, and I will say it again in Bamberg, if you from Germany will join us, there's still place, go there. If you listen to me now and you think, oh, this supplier will never do that, this supplier will never do that, write down these names. Because you need to manage, if you need to manage your suppliers' compliance, well, they are running the factory. Are they really a supplier or just a liability, right? We are often faced with companies that And even they are using an efficient way as ProductIP to collect information, but still I feel many of you in the volume of your business already today have the wrong end of the stick. You should not spend a lot of time to organize compliance for your supplier. You are doing organizing paperwork per order, where the other one should be having an organized production. And you can say, yeah, but my supplier doesn't do it. Okay. If you need to move from SKU-based to batch-based, and if you need to have a broader scope, not just static PDFs, but also data, then you really have a challenge. You actually want to receive information organized just for review, right? So if they are not proactively compliant today, it really will be a problem. It's already a problem now, but really will be a problem tomorrow. To give you an idea, if you are organizing out of context paperwork for somebody else in the supply chain, we estimate that it's 4 to 8 hours for each technical file per every order. It's not scalable. Yeah. 4 hours. And actually that 4 hours is over a 2 to 3 month period. And it's quite irregular because they're sending you this and then they're sending you that and then you're sending that and then you said, this can work if you are the owner of the product design and you're actually gradually collecting evidence. Yeah. If you want to calculate how much people you need, full-time job, 1,600 hours, a little bit less, actually results in around 1,000 effective hours. So how many files somebody can actually make for a supplier? You can do the math, right? If you get organized documents by a supplier, and it will take time to move to that. It's only 1 to 2 hours to review it, and it's a few concentrated attention spans only, and it will become even more efficient when you reduce the numbers of reviews using a risk-based approach. Why do you still want to review files when they are always good? Skip lot is also something that is actually a mechanism in inspections. So why shouldn't skip lot be applicable to review of documents? Yeah. Remember, there was a reason why you were outsourcing manufacturing. Yeah, it's cost and it's also capabilities. What's a good threshold to think about budget for product compliance in general? If you have products in the EU market under your own brands in a complex scope, from toys to food contact materials to electronics, in quite large volumes, then you are closer to the 5% of your turnover than the 2%. Yeah. And this is not including the testing cost of a supplier. This is your inspections, your audits, your post-market surveillance, your insurance, training of your staff, using ProductIP. It's all part of that. 2 to 5% of turnover. Yeah. And if, of course, if you have a mix of private label and other people's brands in your turnover portfolio, then the 5% applies to your brand and maybe the 1 to 2% for the brands of others. This is not the cost for recycling, but it's also dealing with recycling programs. It's recall insurance, it's recall exercises. I know you don't have this budget today, but it's like what Kimberly Boss did when she went to the Olympics. She put it, the starting date and the starting time and the starting hour on the wall and said, this is my point in the horizon. It needs to be there. And you really need to have a consideration about compliance effort and compliance cost in the future when you make a decision. Do I really want these products in my portfolio? And do I really want to have this responsibility role as brand owner, as quasi-manufacturer, right? So I put it in supply chain and not in process, because you need to reimagine the way you collaborate with your supply chain. And this willing and able table is quite normal. It's managing change. Managing performance is the role for a buying office. Managing performance of the supply chain, get the right product with the right properties, in this case, also with the right compliance information at the right time. It doesn't make sense to have a perfect product where you have the compliance information too late. It's that too late is the same as the container arriving too late. It's just too late, right? So a compliance partner like ProductIP, we cannot make people not willing. You manage willing. Willing is commercial motivation, I would say, right? What we can do and what we are doing for our customers is we move supply chain partners from not able to able. And we do that in a one-to-many scale. So we have content available in ProductIpedia. We have Compliance Tuesdays, which is also make you a little bit more able. We have videos on this side of the Chinese firewall and on the back side of the Chinese firewall. We have Compliance Tuesday sessions in the Far East. We don't want people to call us or call you. We want you to be able to deal with this 24/7 all by yourself, DIY, do it yourself. Yeah. For you, it's the rewarding to give. For us, it's the training to give. Yeah. It's relevant, and I don't put it in process. I put it in supply chain, because if you don't manage to change the supply chain, you will be having a serious problem. So they need to become, your suppliers, proactive. They need to be organized, not just the first tier, also the second tier. This takes time, because you can only change a little bit every time you release an order. Remember those transition periods, 30 months, 50 months. It really, really takes time. But you can measure progress, because if you start letting your suppliers create technical files for your review, that's tangible process. Yeah. You can really measure it. And I can tell you, it works. Oh, it's a lot of work. Oh, it's a lot of work. It doesn't go by itself. Nope, doesn't go by itself. Tough decisions need to be made. Yes, you need to say bye-bye to people that are not willing and not able and don't want to move in any direction. So in order to facilitate that, we have introduced at ProductIP also a new flat rate model for this, because if you move from SKU-based to batch-based, it's very difficult to stay in the credits, even in the classic enterprise where you have files made and have a fee per file. It's very difficult for you to predict how many orders you will have in time. So we come up with a flat rate for large-scale enterprises. And large-scale enterprises actually scale of problem, not necessarily a lot of people, scale of problem. It comes with monthly invoicing, it comes with a supplier transition plan, it comes with increased efficiency at your team. Basically, you get an employee, you get a junior compliance associated with a lot of knowledge behind it. Key account project management during the transition period for 6 to 12 months. Yeah. And yes, you can still outsource work to ProductIP if you want. And yes, in certain large-scale companies, we really need to sit down with you on the table and say, okay, for this number of suppliers, we cannot just stick to the normal flat rate. Yeah. It's tough work. More information, I would say, install ProductIpedia in your fingertips. Get the Google Play Store or Apple App Store live on your smartphone and look for ProductIP app. You will get notifications for events like the ones in Hong Kong. But you can also access ProductIpedia articles. And that might be very relevant walking on the trade show. Somebody's mentioning something somewhere. Look at it, share it with your suppliers. Yeah. Again, you can see I'm very consistent in typos. March 31 and April, Bamberg. People from Germany, join me, Kevin Rotler and Andre Gierke for a day-and-a-half workshop in Bamberg. It will be quite inspiring, I can tell you. Still some places available. The reason why we do this 1 day and a half is it's not just about content, it's also about creating a network. You are a modern kind of problem owner of a modern kind of problem, which will not go away. You and I will be in business for many, many years to come. Our jobs in QA, QC are secured looking at the tsunami from Brussels. Hong Kong, April 12th, April 14th. Are you going to be in Hong Kong? Check the event calendar trade shows category and sign up for these events, either next to the global sources and or next to HKTDC, one shy. And if you are in Shenzhen or you have suppliers in Shenzhen or you have colleagues in Shenzhen, let them sign up for the April 15 Live Compliance Tuesday. I will be there. I will be there on all these events, actually. Sign up for our newsletters, connect with us, and work hard on product compliance. This isn't the future. It's now. There's a number of detailed information in the slide deck below that you can read for yourself when we release that slide deck in the coming days. There's a few questions. Do all type of toys need to be tested according to chemical testing? Yes. What's the 2D QR code? Replaces the EM barcode? Yes. 2D QR code sounds double, or does the day stand for something? It's good. It's not double. It's like the current QR code that everybody has been using is what I call a one-dimensional. It's either collecting, either has a address or text or a URL or a number in it. But the new QR code has actually more layers of information in it in one time. So it's 2 dimensions of the QR code. Will ProductIP change their logo because of it? No, I don't think so. We might introduce a small QR code somewhere, but I don't think so. The barcode of ProductIP is not just a barcode. It also represents hanging files, like file folders. It's also, if you turn it 90 degrees around, it's also a stack of documents. So QR code is not a stack of documents. So, all right. 163 people. Wow. Thank you all for sticking with me for 45 minutes, a little bit over it. It's been recorded. We will release it on YouTube somewhere in the coming days. You will get a notification email that it's live. Give me the feedback on how you liked or not liked this one in the emails when we release the links to the content. Share it with colleagues. Appreciate it. We cannot do it by yourself. You cannot do it by yourself. Let's do it together. Thanks for now.